Excuse me, I was just looking at my financials here. Just wanted to see where we were at. I am representing Davis Campbell Bradley. A lot of people knew him as DC, but most of my friends just called me Campbell. I was born right here in Centerville on August 13th, 1858. I had two brothers and a sister. My sister, named Olive, had kind of a strange relationship with a man on a train and got married, and Dad never thought too much of that whole marriage, and he said he was a loser and he'd leave someday. Well, they had a son by the name of Willie, and Mr. Crapful, her husband, left. So I guess Dad was right. So Willie lived with us too, so he was part of our family. My parents were Amanda and William Bradley. Dad was kind of an interesting man. He kind of put our fortune together. He was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and his dad died when he was really young, and his mom died when he was 12, leaving him orphaned. So to make ends meet, he went out and worked in a hotel as a waiter and a short order cook, and when he had spare time, he was a farmhand. When he amassed the small fortune of $27, he decided to go out on his own. And so he bought a bunch of novelties and went throughout Pittsburgh selling it from door to door. And Dad always had a saying, buy it for $1, sell it for $2. And that's what he did. And he amassed a small fortune. And in 1850, when the gold rush happened out in California, he thought it would be a great thing to do is take a bunch of his wares out there and sell them, and maybe he could make some good money. Someplace on that trip he came through Centerville. And Centerville always had a warm place in his heart. And he always wanted to come back here. Well, after he had made a good quantity of money out in California, he went back to Pittsburgh and decided that it was time to settle down, and he wanted to settle down in Centerville. He thought if he came here and opened up a general store and merchandised it over southern Iowa, it would be a good profit-making situation. So he got together a partner by the name of John Fugate, and he came to Centerville and opened up a business, and it was very, very successful. In fact, he was so successful that one of his suppliers by the name of Marshall Fields, does that name ring a bell? Asked him to become a partner with him in a venture of opening stores all over the United States. But Dad declined. Unfortunately, we could have been the headquarters of Marshall Fields, but Dad declined. It decided it wasn't a good idea. Well, with all the money Dad had put together, he thought he kind of wanted to help the people of Centerville out, so he decided to open a bank, and he just called it the Bradley Bank. And he loaned a lot of money, made a lot of money. He got into helping out in coal mines and buying up land. When he died in 1896, he had 13 banks across southern Iowa. He died a millionaire, and he left that fortune to me, my brother James, and William, and little Willie. William was really the apple of his eye, and Dad had kind of groomed him to be the man who was going to take over for him when he died. But at the age of 24, William had appendicitis, and it burst. Poison spread throughout his body, and he died. So that left things to James and I. I had some pretty good schooling that helped me in my business. I graduated from Centerville schools here. Then I moved on to Parsons College, and from there to Monmouth College in Monmouth, Illinois, and finally graduated from the Duff School of Business. In 1885, I met Cora Stubbs from Fairfield, and we got married. And it was a great partnership between the two of us. We got along really well. Both of us loved to socialize, and we loved to get out in the community and do things. We had two children, William and Bettina, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them as we go along. I told you I like to socialize. I belong to the Knights of Pythians. I was a member of the city council here for years, and also a member of the school board for years. Belonged to the YMCA, the Elks Club, the Odd Fellows, and the Masons. And I like to, through my banking, I like to help people. A little different than my brother James. James was a poker player, very shrewd poker player. He kept a detailed log of his winnings and losing. That probably helped him out a little more in banking than my ideas were. And because of that, when Dad died, we kind of had a disagreement about how we should bank. So we decided that he would take over the First National Bank in Centerville. Let me back up. He'd take over Iowa Trust and Bank here in Centerville, and I would take over the First National Bank. And either one of us ever got in financial problem, we'd sell all our interests out to the other one. Well, everything seemed to be going along pretty well with us. The fortune was growing and building until about 1917. My daughter just gotten married, and her husband had gone out to Denver to put together their house out there and kind of get things settled before she moved out there. During 1917, there was a flu epidemic that went through the world. It was reported to killed almost 25% of the population of the world. Well, Bettina got that flu. It went to her heart, and she died of a heart attack. So we had to call her husband in Denver and explain to him that his young bride had just died. About this same time, a lot of the investments that I had made in the community in farming started to go bad. Land prices dropped, crop prices dropped, farmers couldn't pay me. I tried to work with them, but it began to take a lot of my fortune. Coal mining also went down. I had big interest in number 30 mine out here south of town. Well, with the discovery of better coal out in Wyoming, that was kind of the end of the coal mining industry here. So I began to lose my fortune trying to keep all these interests going. Then finally in 1927, it finally caught up to me, all the pressures. I don't know if it was my blood pressure or what, but I had a stroke. I couldn't handle things anymore, so I turned him over to William, my son, and William began to run the family enterprises. He liked to work in dairying. We had a lot of dairy farms around here, and I kind of had him in charge of the dairy industry. February 1st, 1928. It's kind of an important day in my life. Cora, my wife, had gone to Des Moines to a concert, and she was staying overnight with relatives there. William was going to a dairy conference in Ames. His wife was from Sherman, Texas, and she was down there visiting relatives. And I thought, well, I have the whole thing to myself. I'm going to have a good time today. So I went to the Elks Club and spent all afternoon talking to my friends. Went to the picture show that night. Came home, talked to Jim Patton, one of the employees in our house. I forgot to mention that. We did build a beautiful house at 519 Drake Avenue. Most of you know it as Bradley Hall. The shop's at Bradley Hall today. That was our home. But I talked to him, and I retired and went to bed. About 5 o'clock that morning, I had a stabbing pain in my chest, and got it called. The maid came in about 7 and tried to wake me up. Couldn't do that. Called Jim in. Jim took a look at me, and he said, I think he's dead. And that was the end of D.C. Bradley. Now, William tried to keep the fortune together, but the 1929 stock market crash kind of doomed our whole fortune. And so they foreclosed on all our assets, and he moved to Texas and got into the Texas government, where he spent the rest of his working days. Cora, my wife, she lived at 519 Drake until 1945, and then she turned the house over to her niece, Mrs. John Young. And that was pretty much the end of the D.C. Bradley story in Centerville. Thank you.